After turning 16, a boy awakens supernatural powers and begins to be hunted by alien robots. Today we're going to recap the story of the 2016 movie, Max Steel. After several moves over time, young Max returns to the house where his parents lived when he was a baby. While unpacking the boxes, Max sees a photo of his late father Jim, and when he goes to put them away, he realizes that something in his hand is causing the TV to distort. Since he thinks he's hallucinating, the boy washes his face and goes to school straight away, passing by the old EnTech laboratory, the place where his father worked. While observing the place, Max receives a message from his mother, but when he picks up his cell phone to look at it, once again his hands cause oscillations that turn the device off. Certain that he's going mad, the boy pedals back in the direction of the school. But when he's almost there, he doesn't pay attention to the road and ends up crossing in front of a truck, forcing him to throw himself over a bike rack. After losing consciousness for a while, Max wakes up to find Sophia standing right in front of him, the girl who was driving the truck. After making sure the boy is all right, she asks him to meet her after class and says she'll fix his bike, then goes to join her friends. Now recovered, Max enters the school and finds a dedication to his father in the hallway, telling him a little more about a hurricane that caused the accident that eliminated Jim. After class, Max is sitting on a bench when Sophia appears and asks him to put the bike in the skip, taking him to her house to have the wheel repaired. With the repair done, the boy gets on his bike and pedals home, where he finds his mother Molly talking to Dr. Miles, the current director of EnTech and his father's former work colleague. After making the introductions, Molly asks her son to take a shower, and that's exactly what he does, but as he's leaving the bathroom, Max feels the effects of the oscillation again and starts to get dizzy. At the same time, a small drone inside EnTech's cooling pool begins to glow and emits waves of tachyon energy, which catches the scientist's attention. Suddenly, a large column of water rises and one of the technicians approaches the molecules, but just as he is about to touch them, a colleague activates the emergency system, locking the place down and summoning the security team. Hidden in the ventilation system, the drone lures the guards into a room and manages to knock some of them out, escaping from the containment chamber through the door they passed through. Even so, the agents manage to corner the alien drone, which is forced to burrow into the ground to get past them, opening a hole in the ceiling to escape soon after. Without imagining what is happening at EnTech, Max sits down at the table and his mother tells him a little more about Miles, as well as revealing that he was in the laboratory on the day of the accident. When he receives the news, Max's powers go haywire again and the whole house is cut off, forcing him to go down to the basement to check the fuses. In the power panel, Max finds several hurricane survival guides hidden away, as well as a large stash of food and drink, which intrigues him. After reconnecting the power, the boy returns to the table and finds Miles arguing with his mother. As soon as they notice his presence, the two stop and the director of EnTech heads for the exit, but before he leaves, he hands over his card so that Max can get in touch. Curious to find out more about his father, the boy goes to the computer and starts researching Miles' name, finding various reports and recordings about the accident, as well as discovering that a sudden tornado destroyed the EnTech laboratory. As he makes discoveries, Max's powers start to fluctuate again and his hand begins to emit a kind of liquid energy. Confused, the boy goes outside and starts testing his powers, discovering that he is practically a human battery, but because he can't control himself, he ends up making everything explode. After the test, Max goes on a date with Sophia in a restaurant, but during the meal, his powers get out of control again and he starts to get sick, temporarily losing his hearing and causing the whole place to run out of energy. Frightened, the boy goes into the bathroom to try to calm down and realizes that his whole body is glowing in the dark. In order not to be discovered, Max decides to just run away and leaves Sophia alone in the restaurant. Not knowing what to do, the boy pedals off into the middle of the forest where his body collapses for good and releases a huge burst of energy. Suddenly, something appears in front of him and Max loses consciousness immediately afterwards, waking up in his bed the next morning. When he looks at his clothes, he realizes that they have been completely destroyed and goes to the bathroom still not knowing what happened, making the confusion even worse when he realizes that some kind of white drone is behind him. Frightened, Max runs into his room and tries to lock the door, but as the robot continues to chase him, the boy grabs his bat to defend himself. Sensing the human's intention, the drone asks him to remain calm and introduces itself as Steel, an alien life form that feeds on the tachyon energy that Max emanates and is in charge of preventing him from collapsing, just as happened in the forest. Thinking everything is crazy, Max asks where he came from and Steel replies that he has lost most of his memory, but that he remembers that his mission is to protect him from any danger. While they're talking, Molly goes into the bedroom and Max throws Steel into the laundry basket trying to hide it. After she leaves, the alien drone notices the energy building up in Max's chest and sticks to it to absorb the excess. Afraid that his mother will find out about Steel, the boy takes him to talk in the forest, but while they are distracted, 2 black SUVs stop on the road and some armed men disembark to hunt Steel down, forcing the two to flee before they are shot. In the middle of the escape, Max connects with Steel's processor and they both relive the memory of the day Jim left, discovering that he was attacked by the Ultralinks. Still unable to understand why their minds are linked, Max decides to take Steel to school, thinking that they won't be attacked there, but the little monster won't sit still and almost causes the boy to be discovered several times. Unsure of his next move, Max takes Steel under the bleachers and together they try to recover new memories, but come up empty. That is until the little robot sees Max's drawing of the old N-Tech laboratory. When he learns that the company has been attacked by the Ultralinks, Max immediately decides to break in, breaking the chain to enter a forbidden zone. In the place where his father's laboratory used to be, Max's powers fluctuate again and Steel manages to stabilize him, leading them to discover turbo energy. While testing his new abilities, the boy realizes that he is now much faster and extremely strong, being able to punch through a concrete pillar. Together, the two spend the afternoon training until Max decides to improve his agility with parkour. On top of a handrail, the boy ends up slipping and falling from a considerable height, forcing Steel to protect him by turning his body into armor. Confused, the boy asks what this is and Steel replies that when they harmonize their energy, they can form this protection. Once inside the armor, Max accesses another part of Steel's memories and is able to see the moment when the Ultralinks invaded his father's laboratory, discovering that the artificial intelligence-powered drone was there when it all happened. Curious, the boy asks him how he met his father and Steel says he can't remember, but Max knows someone who can, Miles. To get in touch with him, the boy goes home and finds a card with N-Tech's new address on the fridge. As he pedals there, Max talks a little more about Steel's memories and the alien robot tells him that the Ultralinks can manipulate the elements, controlling the air to create a storm like the one that eliminated Jim. Because of the conversation, Max gets distracted and once again almost gets run over by Sophia, who stops to give him a telling off. While the boy tries to explain himself, Steel warns him that they are being followed and Max starts cycling madly down an alley, hiding while leaving the girl alone. There, Steel suggests they use the armor and for some reason Max refuses, saying they should split up and lose the enemies to get to N-Tech. Even though it's a bad idea, the boy insists that's what they should do and Steel accepts, going to the pursuer's car to slow them down by puncturing the tires. On the other side, Max comes out of the alley and ends up bumping into Sophia, who complains that he always leaves in the middle of a conversation. At first, the young man tries to explain himself, but soon notices the SUV behind them and decides to just ask for a ride. After she accepts, Max puts his bike in the truck and Sophia drives to N-Tech, where they meet Miles for a chat. Once inside the building, the man introduces them to the facilities and talks a little more about what it was like working with Jim. Wanting to find out more, Max asks them to talk in private and asks how the accident happened, but Miles says that when he arrived at the lab, the place was already completely destroyed. He then shows Jim a miniature energy core and tells him that this was the project of a lifetime for Jim, who had worked for years to make the prototype able to capture any kind of energy. Miles says that Jim was obsessed with the core and so ended up skipping some safety steps, blaming his own partner for the accident. Shocked by the information, Max's powers manifest and are soon absorbed by the miniature, but despite noticing this, Miles says absolutely nothing. Seeing that her friend is not well, Sophia enters the room to offer help and Max decides to just walk away, leaving the two of them behind. As he runs along the train tracks, the boy has a few more flashes of memory and falls quite dizzy. Suddenly, Max realizes that a huge gale is coming towards him and, already knowing that it is an Ultralink, he decides to hide inside some concrete rollers. After a few seconds, the wind mysteriously stops and Max starts to hear someone honking, finding a woman with her car turned off right on the train tracks. With little time before she is hit, the boy concentrates his powers on the hood of the vehicle and manages to get it to turn back on, allowing the woman to leave. But the Ultralink is still behind him and takes the shape of a hurricane. With the storm only a few meters away, Max runs to a cabin and manages to shelter there until everything seems to calm down. But just as he's starting to calm down, the tornado appears right on top of him again, completely destroying the place and leaving the boy unprotected. Suddenly, Ultralink finally reveals himself inside the gale and stretches out his giant arm to try and catch him. But at the last second, Steel appears and transforms into armor to protect his companion, sharing some of the impact with him. After the blow, they end up out of sync and are forced to run for their lives. Hiding behind a fence, Max tries to use his powers to put an end to the storm, but all he manages to do is tamper with the railroad light. At that moment, the Ultralink comes even closer and tries to pull Max for a second time, forcing him to hold onto the fence. With the human about to be swallowed up, Steel flies to him and manages to protect him with his armor, preventing him from being sucked in and stopping the storm. Without the gale, Steel sees that the enemy is exposed and asks Max to take the opportunity to eliminate him, and that's exactly what he does, firing a blast of energy that destroys the Ultralink instantly. As Max assimilates what has happened, the enemy falls right in front of him and he realizes that the Ultralink has the same appearance as Steel, triggering memories that reveal that the drone betrayed Jim and altered the energy cores, causing Max's father to disintegrate. Furious at the discovery, Max accuses Steel of being a traitor and doesn't listen to anything he says, walking away and leaving his partner completely alone. Not knowing what to do, the boy rushes home to find several armed men in the hallway, which leads him to believe that Molly has been captured. While Max is thinking about what to do, the soldiers spot him in the middle of the woods and start running after him, forcing him to flee. Not knowing where to go, he goes to Sophia and says that he will explain everything, but first he needs her truck and a cell phone. Using a glove, Max calls Miles and tells him that his mother has been captured, discovering that the same thing happened when Jim was alive. Miles then says that they must have taken her to the old N-Tech lab and warns him that it's a trap, but Max doesn't care and drives straight there. Along the way, his powers fluctuate so much that light bulbs explode on the street lamps and his truck stops working. As his bike is still in the dumpster, Max pedals to the abandoned laboratory and starts looking for his mother, all while Sophia calls Molly to ask about him. Completely safe, the woman says that her son isn't at home and asks if she knows where he is, but all Sophia says is that he's been acting strange ever since they went to visit Miles. To understand what's going on, Molly ends the call and asks the N-Tech soldiers if Miles ordered them to eliminate Steel. When she learns that he did, she discovers that her husband's former partner is a traitor and tells the soldiers that she is the majority shareholder in N-Tech, so they must obey her orders and go after her son. Unaware that he has been tricked, Max continues looking for his mother until he finds the laboratory where his father worked, discovering that someone is monitoring his vital signs from there. Exploring the place, the boy finds the life-size energy core and realizes that Steel is trapped inside, but as the object has a layer of protection, there is nothing he can do to reach it. At that moment, Max releases another part of his memory and discovers that Jim and Steel entered the energy core to load a weapon capable of eliminating the Ultralinks, but instead of firing, Miles took advantage of their distraction to sabotage the building's defense system, allowing the enemies to enter. With the Ultralinks in the lab, Miles goes to Steel and puts him inside the core too, condemning him to have his energy sucked out while accusing him of being a traitor and helping the humans. With the two of them inside, Miles activates the core and starts capturing energy, but Jim is determined to stop him and decides to overload the system. Before doing so, the scientist asks Steel to go into hibernation mode, saying that this will allow him to survive the impact. What's more, Jim asks Steel to find Max when he wakes up and protect him at all costs, giving up all his energy to destroy the core straight away. With his memory gone, Max comes back to reality and takes matters into his own hands as soon as he realizes that Miles is after him. But because he's inexperienced, he's easily taken down by the scientist. To defend himself, Max tries to attack the enemy with his powers, but Miles is wearing armor that can absorb energy and doesn't take any damage. The director of N-Tech then says that Max will be his source of tachyon energy and orders him to enter the core. Refusing to obey, the boy accuses Miles of having betrayed his father and tries to fight back, but is once again knocked down by the scientist who tells him that Jim was actually an alien. In a hurry, Miles once again orders him to enter the core, and that's exactly what the boy does, but with the intention of merging with Steel. Once inside the machine, Max apologizes for having doubted his friend and begins to overload the core with tachyon energy, but this only distracts Miles and allows him to unite with Steel once again, wearing his armor. With his turbo mode activated, Max comes out of the core and goes all out on the traitor, but unlike last time, now he's able to fight evenly and strike back. Even so, Miles' claw is able to absorb the tachyon energy and Max becomes weaker and weaker during the fight, putting him at a disadvantage once again. To strike back, Steel turns on turbo camouflage mode and they take advantage of their invisibility to hit the enemy, but it's still possible to see their reflexes in the water and Miles takes advantage of this to hit them, managing to regain the advantage. With Max on the ground, the mad scientist drains his energy until he starts to separate from Steel, but at the last second, the N-Tech soldiers arrive and start shooting at Miles, buying the boy time to think about what to do. While the men distract Miles, Max hatches a plan and comes up with the idea of overloading the enemy's armor to cause an explosion, just as he did in the forest. To do this, they advance on Miles and allow him to drive his claw into Steel's armor, activating turbo mode immediately afterwards. With an insane amount of tachyon energy, Miles' armor begins to collapse and Max finally gets the explosion he wanted, defeating the enemy at the cost of a good deal of his energy. A few seconds after the impact, Max and Steel wake up and are rescued by N-Tech soldiers. With her son now home, Molly finally decides to tell the whole truth and reveals that, after Jim's perishment, she fled to several different cities to keep the Ultralinks away from Max, but when Miles suggested they use the N-Tech system to keep him safe, she decided to return. For doing so, Molly almost allowed her son to be captured, but in the end everything worked out and they managed to defeat Miles. Even so, the Ultralinks are still on the loose and soon Max will be hunted by them, but with turbo mode and Steel at his side, there's nothing that can stop him. So what did you think of this movie? Leave it in the comments below. And if you like the video, like and subscribe for more movie recaps. See you next time.